Welcome to the latest edition of the OpenRAN show, TelecomTV's new program that looks at what's going on across the OpenRAN sector. And this month we're doing things a little bit differently. We're on the road, we're in Berlin, we're at the i14y Lab Summit to find out what operators, vendors, integrators, academics, test labs, startups are thinking about in terms of OpenRAN developments. And the focus of this summit is test and validate. So I started off by talking to Carsten Rossenhövel, Managing Director at Berlin-based test lab EANTC, about the results and outcomes of the recent ORAN Alliance plugfest. Carsten, good to see you again. You're becoming a bit of a regular on the OpenRAN show. So EANTC, as you've talked about before, has been involved in the ORAN Alliance plugfest, which finished recently. What was the main focus of what you were doing at EANTC as part of the plugfest? Because it happened in lots of different locations around the world, didn't it?
Right, we focused on two things. Number one was end-to-end testing of the RU, DU, and CU. And number one, the primary focus was on RIC testing, RICs and XAPs and RAPs. I mean, this is one of the most exciting parts of the ORAN industry, but also one of the least mature yet. So the vendors were really trying very hard. In total, we had 11 vendors, including test tool vendors and RIC and XAP and end-to-end vendors participating. I think it's quite promising outcome, and of course, a lot of testing needs to be done to get towards production networks.
So what were you actually testing in terms of the RIC platform? Is it just functionality testing at the moment? Is it against ORAN specs?
No, actually it's use case testing. So that's the important part, right? Of course, functionality testing would also be possible. You know, a RIC has interfaces and so on, but the key part is really to validate the use cases. For example, energy savings, for example, load balancing, for example, monitoring of getting telemetry out of the network, stuff like that. Things that were implemented previously in the so-called self-organizing networks, CSON functions, and now need to be moved out in the ORAN architecture to the XAP scenarios.
Okay. Do you see this being, you've just done that's the spring plugfest, and that's just completed. There's another one, the autumn, I think it is, or fall plugfest. Will that be more RIC testing, or is there something new and exciting coming down the line for you to be testing at EANTC?
I think for the vendors, the RIC testing is the most exciting part because it's still a lot of work to be done. From the marketing perspective, maybe people get used to it, but in reality, things don't move as fast as they do in marketing, right? And my utmost goal is to test not only for showcases, but to get the implementations more multi-vendor ready and closer to production readiness.
Okay. And are you seeing a growth in the number of companies that have RAPs, but particularly XAPs that can run on these RIC platforms? Because the XAPs are going to be the toughest ones to develop, right?
That's right. And there are interesting, exciting number of startups forming, especially in Europe. University spin-offs and stuff like that. So I think there is hope. But of course, whether these XAPs find the right use case to really trigger sales in the end, that's a big open question.
Yeah, that's right. So at the end of the day, this needs to be a scale economy and provide business opportunities for these startups as well.
Right, and hopefully that should start soon, because some vendors, if you think about the DU and CU vendors, they have already developed for more than 2 years, and they're really eagerly waiting for some business. So I think the work or the task is in the hands of the service vendors right now, and I hope you ask them, when are you going to start to invest into mass scalability? Most advertisements that I see, most announcements that I see are really about still pilot case scenarios with a couple of dozen of radios.
So EANTC is just one of a number of labs focused on OpenRAN testing. And there's a feeling now in the sector that there's a little bit of overlap and fragmentation amongst the different labs that are undertaking OpenRAN validation, certification, and general testing. And this is a topic close to the heart of Julie Cubb from the NTIA in the US. Julie, you were on one of the panels this morning with some of the other representatives of other test labs and test organizations. And one of the big focus areas was the defragmentation of the OpenRAN test sector and greater collaboration. Why is this important and how can it be achieved?
So we just did the 2022 5G challenge last year and the 2023 5G challenge this year. And what we noticed is there's a lot of interpretation from the 3GPP standards and ORAN Alliance specifications to get to test plans. And there's a lot of testing going on throughout the world in different labs and different organizations. And what we really need to do to come together is have a common set of test plans. And we've provided already our test plans for our OpenRU, OpenCUDU testing on our website. But what we really need to do is take the next step and work internationally as a technical community to come together. And what we believe is about, there are some very specific testing for operators and vendors, but about, we think 80%, maybe it's 70, maybe it's 80, about 80% of the testing could be generalized if you want to ensure interoperability of the components. The other 20% could be vendor specific or use cases, but if you get to sort of this, we believe 80% testing and agree as a community to come together, then we really think we go towards interoperability.
Okay, well that would save time, effort and money, of course, but how can this happen?
Yeah, I think so. There's lots of different labs around the world. Just on our panel alone, there was, representation from Taiwan, from the UK, and also from the i14y lab in Germany as part of this conference. And we need to have a follow-on action to come together, not just with the labs on the panel, but even other organizations internationally. And we're going to be working towards finding a collaborative technical effort with worldwide to come together as a community to agree on technically what these test plans should be.
And is that something you think that will happen between the labs themselves, or is that something that maybe a telecom infra project kind of organization can help to bring together?
Yeah, I think there's lots of different organizations, TIP, the OTICs, there's vendors themselves, there's operators, there's academia, there's lots of different groups, startups working on this. And we all, as engineers, as technical community, need to all come together to agree, what does it take to achieve true plug and play? And that's what we're trying to do. Right now it's a little bit of a manual process and there's different interpretations of standards and specs, but really to get to true plug and play, we all need to agree as a technical community and then test it out.
Another organization undertaking OpenRAN testing is ITRI from Taiwan. I spoke to Maggie Chow from ITRI about what's going on in Taiwan and what the test lab is doing in terms of its OpenRAN work. You've been part of the programming at the summit this morning on a panel with other members of the test community. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing at ITRI in terms of OpenRAN testing? Is this something you're just introducing or you've been doing already in previous years?
Okay, thank you for having us. And ITRI is a research institute in Taiwan. So we do both R&D and industrial promotion. So that's the reason we try to work with different labs to do so, because OpenRAN for the communication, the interoperability is very important. So we do think if we want to join into the OpenRAN industry, that the testing is something we need to focus more on. So our government sponsored our 5G Open Network Lab in 2019. So they sponsor us to build out a carrier-grade end-to-end environment so that we can do the integration testing, not just for the product testing, also the integration testing. In that way that we can help our companies in Taiwan so that they can enhance their capability when they need to work with other partners. And speaking of that, because if you want to do something, you definitely need to work with the global partners. So that's why we choose starting with the TIP. So we work with TIP. So we are also one of the TIP community lab, so that we can help them to do the battery testing in Taiwan. Because for the OpenRAN or whole ecosystem, most of the RU companies are coming from Taiwan. So that's the reason that TIP can set up a community lab in this area, so that it's easy to have more suppliers can do the testing in the close to their place, and easy for them to figure out what are the qualified solutions. So that's the reason we set up the lab, and then we work with a global partner like TIP to do the testing. But all in all the things is the acceptance from the operator. So we also start working with the local operator, Taiwan Mobile here, because we need to do all the things localized. So we need to get this kind of reference localized. So we work with Taiwan Mobile, and in the first beginning, they don't think it's they do their own network, the public network. It's not easy for the ground field operator to accept a new technology. A lot of work need to do, but they start to work with us because they see this process and they see some value for the OpenRAN into the private network. So in the first beginning of this year, they decided to work with us and the ITRI, so that they can take the ITRI's batching process as part of their procurement process. I think that is really good. It really is something for us. Even for us, we are very excited about their commitment. So they are very excited about what we are doing. And for now, we are about to do 2 companies per quarter. So they are happy about this kind of process because they have more and more qualified solutions that they can select, they can work with. And we definitely join the panel today. Is another way that we can work with other testing lab. So we also try to find out how we can work together, because we need to share the efforts to do things better.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so in Taiwan, so Taiwan Mobile sounds like it's really embracing the process. Do you think this is happening in other parts of the world as well? Are you getting a sense from the other labs that operators will start to introduce the badging and certification in their RFIs and RFQs?
Yeah, I think it's a process, and I'm quite excited about to join this event, because this event is organized by the i14y, and behind it is the Dutch Telecom. So it's kind of the operator, the bigger operator, tier 1 operator are endorsed to this, and we also know about the mall. So there are 5 big operators within this one. So when we are in Asia, we know about this news, but we just knew about this. But join this event, I can really experience their supporting on this way. And so I think Taiwan Mobile still thinks of this kind of thing. So that's the reason they try to join TIP, because they can get in touch with other global operators so that they can learn from them. And the Taiwan Mobile also eager to contribute, so that they also contribute their local requirement, their experience, so that they try to use this kind of inter-networking to make this momentum growing.
So there's an increasing focus amongst the OpenRAN sector and community on collaboration, and that's going to be increasingly important as time goes on and as the sector gets bigger. So I talked to Alex Choi, chairman of the ORAN Alliance, about the importance of industry collaboration for the OpenRAN sector. So lots being talked about here, but there's a constant theme that keeps on coming up, and that is industry collaboration. How vital is this to help to move the OpenRAN sector forward?
That's a very good question, and I'm really glad to be back this event and see the people from across the world. For example, the NTIA and also Sonic, the people from Sonic, and the ladies from the Taiwan, ITRI. And today we have all the right people for the discussion around that topic, this collaboration, especially the whole theme of this i14y summit today is all about testing and integrations and validations and certification and batching. Today, the fact is there appears to be a little bit fragmented approaches which is good because means we are gaining a lot of tractions from across the world and different stakeholders. So now it's a time in shifting our focus from how to accelerate the developments of the testing specification and all kinds of certification batching program. Now it's time to execution, And this morning we have a fantastic setup for the panel discussion and having all these stakeholders from various testing and labs, open labs across the world. And then I really enjoyed the discussions and what's coming out of it. They are able to identify very tangible action items, which is, let's say, okay, what is the most burning topic? So there's a good agreement and consensus, which is ORU and SMO, testing integration, which is absolutely right topic. So it's important for us, all of us, to really join our energy, effort, even budget, and to really focusing on the execution on the testing and validations, and so that making sure that we are providing commercial ready OpenRAN, ORAN compliant solutions, not only the component level but also end-to-end level.
Okay. So there's clearly a willingness from the test labs and the authorities to defragment, to make things more efficient. Is there as much support from the operator community as well to have their input into this, to make sure that what these labs decide is most important is actually what the operators want? And do all the operators want the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the operators has been a very active role when we started this journey by putting together their requirements for the OpenRAN, ORAN. So that's the most important input for during the course of the specification developments. Now it's time operator to do it again, but this time it's more like a testing and certification and batching program. Just like what we've done together, this last step also we have it's time as operators has to work together and to drive this kind of a certification and batching program. And this morning, there was one interesting issue raised by NTIA. So still there is some works to be done. For example, where is the common? What can I say? It's a requirements, or there is a common requirements, but still it contains a lot of optional features. So now it's time we even further narrow down all these open issues, open individual items, requirements, and to make a decision whether operator wants to deploy it or not. So with that finer set of requirements, then that can be used for the input for this testing and integrations.
So the focus of this summit is test and validate, but of course that's not all that's being discussed here. I spoke to Shamik Mishra from Capgemini about one of the industry's other really hot topics, and that's power consumption management. What's going on in terms of developing capabilities and apps and platforms that can help monitor and reduce energy consumption in OpenRAN networks?
Thanks, Ray. I think the fact that the radio network is one of the biggest energy consumer in the mobile network cannot really be left out in any kind of innovation projects. And OpenRAN being an innovation project, so naturally sustainability is a key area to focus on. What OpenRAN actually brings in is a huge amount of data that comes in from the radio network. And today we can access that data. And using that data, we could possibly optimize the network to a certain extent. For example, detecting sleeping cells, using shutting down carriers which are not in use. And we can do that proactively today using that data collected from OpenRAN. So OpenRAN actually gives us that platform to do it differently. And that's what in Capgemini we have started the project BOSS, which is actually about creating data-driven, sustainable energy efficiency apps development. But we also understand two things. One, sustainability innovation is happening outside the telecom industry. So how can we actually bring in some of the best practices from other industry to telecom? That's one. The second is that no one company can build an energy efficiency app. There will be many ideas coming in on how to optimize the network better. So the focus is on creating an ecosystem, a platform where different application companies can come in and build their energy efficiency app on top of it. Now, that is a great idea, but it has a challenge. The challenge is that would application companies actually understand OpenRAN? Is it easy to utilize? Where do they get test beds? So that's where i14y and labs are so important, where companies who are innovating in energy efficiency gets a working test bed so that they can leverage that to create some of their applications that they're working on. Okay. So lowering the barrier of entry, I think, is critical for energy efficiencies. We cannot expect everything to come out from the telecom community alone. And that's what we are focused on in part of the Project BOSS.
And as you'd expect from any gathering of people in the OpenRAN sector, the RAN Intelligent Controller, or RIC, has also been a hot topic of discussion. And that's something that Patrick Lopez from Core Analysis has been focused on recently. Patrick, you're doing a report at the moment on the RAN Intelligent Controller. That's one of the things that's being discussed here at the summit. There's a lot of hope and excitement around the RIC about what it could bring to the market. Is that excitement justified?
I think it is justified in the sense that at the end of the day, what the industry wants is to be able to manage the radio access network in a more optimized fashion. At the end of the day, until 5G, operators were really creating one connectivity product that was the same for everybody. Whether you're a person, whether it's a smartphone, whether you're an enterprise, whether you're a CEO, the connectivity product is the same for everyone. The promise of 5G and future is that you are going to be able to create new technology, new connectivity products for different devices, for different use cases, for different geographies. In order to do that, you need to be able to program the network. And one of the ways to do that, specifically in the radio access network, is to basically being able to create slices or different type of experiences. And it's possible to do that today outside of RAN, and it's called slicing. But the mechanism to enable it are not all there yet. The difficulty is to do that, particularly in a multi-vendor environment. And that's where OpenRAN comes in. You had in the past self-organizing networks that were the premises, if you want, of this, being able to program the radio access network and provide specific capabilities across multiple vendors. It didn't work too well. It didn't work too well because it wasn't the standard. It were a number of companies that were doing proprietary integration with a number of vendors in order to provide that abstraction layer. What OpenRAN is doing with RIC is basically standardizing that abstraction layer and providing this as a platform, in the sense that the RICs, because there are two RICs, are designed to be platform where developers can create apps that can be then loaded onto those platforms in order to do a variety of different things. So here at the show, we're talking about the first apps that are emerging, mostly around power management, because obviously it's a big part of the concerns in telecoms right now, how to be greener, how to grow in terms of capacity without having to explode in terms of energy consumption. So that's one RIC aspect that we see, one app. Other apps are more around like traffic steering and traffic management. So all of those elements, if you want, provide context for how networks are going to evolve over time to create those connectivity products that I was mentioning.
Okay. And do you think that's well understood in the market, the role of the RIC and the X apps and R apps? Do you think the sector gets it, or is there still a lot of education to be done?
I think we're at the beginning of the hype phase. We're at the end of the hype phase for OpenRAN, generally speaking. But as far as RIC is concerned and apps are concerned, we're at the beginning of the hype phase. There's a lot of misconception. First, there are two elements, two RICs, the non-real-time RIC and the near real-time RICs, and they bear the same name, but they're very different. They're very different animals. The non-real-time RIC is instantiated in the service management and orchestration layer. So it's really the product of OSS and SON. That's the evolution of those.
Yeah.
And basically, the way we differentiate it from a technology standpoint is basically anything that requires more than 1 second treatment or feedback, that could be in the non-real-time RIC. The near real-time RIC, in contrast, is in the RAN itself. Today, well, there are commercial near real-time RICs that are deployed, but today, basically, it's a feature set that is embedded within the base stations, or within the CU, DU, and RU in OpenRAN. So these features, they're part of the vendor's capabilities. What OpenRAN Alliance proposes is to extract those features from those products and to create basically that platform that I was mentioning. It's all nice from a conceptual standpoint. I'm not convinced that it's realistic. Non-real-time RIC, it's easy in the sense that the market is used to having independent vendors providing OSS and SON capabilities, and that's an easy entry point for any new entrant, either new entrant to telecom or vendors that are in the telecom space but want to enter into the RAN space. That's a low-hanging fruit and doesn't require a lot of RAN knowledge. In contrast, near real-time RIC, we're talking a lot about artificial intelligence and machine learning, and I see a lot of people that are experts in that field, but they're not experts necessarily in RAN, but that's what it's going to take. You're going to have experts in RAN that are also experts in machine learning in order to make this work. It's not by accident that those functionalities today are embedded within the radio station, because being able to take decisions on let's say 100 millisecond time frame requires, well, a lot of knowledge of basically the mathematics of propagating radio signals. And that's not something that you just learn by looking at equations. It requires a long time frame.
So let's take a break for a short while from the i14y Lab Summit and get the latest OpenRAN industry news from TelecomTV's Deputy Editor, Janitza Boyadzieva.
The telecom industry needs to focus even more on developing total cost of ownership models for OpenRAN. According to the results of the poll conducted during TelecomTV's recent OpenRAN summit, more than 230 people voted in the poll, which asked which are the most important areas of focus for the OpenRAN community over the next 12 months. TCO models attracted the most votes, just as it did in the same poll a year ago. The industry also needs to focus more on integration models and blueprints, as OpenRAN will require telcos to integrate and support best-of-breed solutions from multiple suppliers. The development of reliable RAN intelligent controller, or RIC, platforms also attracted a large number of votes. You can see the full poll results and find out how they compare to last year's votes on the TelecomTV site. Zooming into what companies have been up to in the past few weeks, Bulgaria is the latest market to host an OpenRAN trial. Local operator Vivacom will conduct an OpenRAN trial on its 2G, 4G and 5G networks, using technology from parallel wireless. The company stated that the tests aim to demonstrate that OpenRAN can deliver equivalent or improved performance compared to traditional radio access networks. Parallel Wireless and Vivacom plan to conduct laboratory and in-field tests in urban and rural environments. Meanwhile, Parallel Wireless has also been trialing its technology with Vodafone in nearby Turkey. Across the pond, US 5G newcomer Dish, which is building out a greenfield national OpenRAN-based network, claimed to have reached its latest service coverage target. Dish said its 5G service now reaches 70% of the US population, fulfilling its license obligations. This means its 5G service is now available to more than 240 million citizens across the US. Dish also claimed to have fulfilled another FCC requirement by launching more than 15,000 5G sites in total. Meanwhile, Samsung Networks, one of Dish's main vendor collaborators, boasted that Dish has managed to roll out its network by choosing Samsung as a major partner. The governments of the US and Japan recently enhanced their technology ties by reaffirming their commitment to seek a broad range of opportunities for OpenRAN-focused policy and technical engagement. The two nations will also look to boost commercial activity in the private sector and will aim to identify a common concrete target for the global market share of OpenRAN, a step deemed key to secure and open 5G networks globally. According to the US Department of Commerce, joining forces with Japan will help the two countries counter the economic challenges and uncertainties that they are facing. But the governments of the US and Japan are not the only ones increasingly interested in the OpenRAN market. The Brazilian Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation and the Brazilian Company for Research and Industrial Innovation will invest 180 million Brazilian reals, equal to around $36 million into innovative technologies. These include developments of OpenRAN, augmented reality and immersive technologies, as well as research into 5G and 6G. The investments will be applied over a period of 42 months and will include expanding scientific and technological competence in R&D, skills and startup developments. Back across the Atlantic, Polish OpenRAN-focused network software startup IS Wireless has been making strides in a few European markets. In Germany, it has been selected by a consortium of German industrial leaders, including T-Systems, to deliver radio units, distributed unit and centralized unit, and even a near real-time RAN intelligent controller with X-apps for an OpenRAN-based 5G network. The deployment is expected to happen in Berlin later this year. The goal of the consortium is to assess the potential of OpenRAN for industrial applications. This move comes after IS Wireless recently announced that it has helped to deploy the first OpenRAN-enabled 5G private network in Poland. And we complete our news roundup with some insights on the global state of the OpenRAN market. According to Del Oro Group, growth in OpenRAN and virtualized RAN system revenues experienced a slowdown during the first quarter of this year. But this is no reason for concern, as the analyst team explained that the sluggish growth was in line with expectations, as both OpenRAN and vRAN recorded dramatic growth in 2022. OpenRAN revenues in 2023 are expected to represent between 6 and 10% of the total global RAN market, valuing the OpenRAN systems sector at between $2.4 billion and $4 billion for the full year. These are the key OpenRAN developments we've been following during the past few weeks.
Back to the summit now. So we've heard a lot about progress with testing, validation, RAN intelligent controller development. But has the OpenRAN sector really found its groove yet? Well, maybe not so much, according to Boris Maurer from Accenture. Now, Accenture talks to a lot of the operators about what they're doing in the market, including with OpenRAN. What's your sense of what's happening with OpenRAN? What's the trend?
Hey, good to see you again here at i14y. Great gathering of the ecosystem today. And I think the discussions that we're hearing today is a lot about Last year we've been talking about ORAN will happen and we need to now take choices. What we're hearing here more is, and I think that's right, it's going to be prime time 25 and onwards. Because everybody is in testing mode, everybody's in learning mode, and everybody still is not completely clear on how it will develop. So I think it's a market that definitely will come, but it will take a little bit of time before everything comes together in a good way.
Okay. And I hear that the technology is fine, but it's maybe some of the other elements that are holding things up. Is it really about trying to figure out the cost model or the business model? What's pushing it into 2025 and beyond?
So I think if we look at it today, features are coming together. So we are probably at feature parity and a little bit beyond on OpenRAN with 4G, but still catching up on 5G. But when it is prime time in 12 to 18 months, we will be all there. So technology will not be the issue. The issue will be whether we find the right business models. So how will operators actually procure and buy and implement open networks? At the moment, they are still doing it a bit like they did with their old closed integrated networks, and that doesn't give them the benefits. So they need to rethink the model around this one. That is one thing. The other thing, it is capabilities. If you procure an integrated network, you only need to operate it and then build offerings for your customers on top of it. Now you need to rethink your contribution to that as an operator and what you want to do yourself, what you're doing with an ecosystem. And probably everybody's finding out that this is scarce talent and operators don't have that talent to basically go full steam ahead, and they don't have the operating model, they don't have the automation. And probably also, and that is the third point, they feel a little bit hesitant about the standardization. So actually, do we have standardized APIs that we're going to expose? And will we feel that we can interoperate all that, or are we going to the next login? And I think that is where basically initiatives like from Camara and also the collaboration now between TM Forum and Camara, which we are architecting, is super important, and also then basically integrating with things like the Telecom Infra project. So that this is all coming together now with the operators and also their alliances, I think is great. And is actually the prerequisite for the industry to gain confidence that this will work together in a fine way.
Okay, so I get the sense that the industry, the market, the network operators know what they need to do, because we see that in the developments within the industry groups, but also with the operators themselves talking about becoming techcos instead of telcos. But the big question is, are they capable of doing it? We've heard for decades, we're going to change, we're going to do things differently, we're going to evolve with the market, and very often it falls flat on its face. Are we going to see it happen this time?
So telcos need to become techcos, but they are not software companies. And it is a hard way and a long way to become software companies. And telcos try to do a lot themselves. This will not work. They need to rely on partners. It's an opportunity for us, and it's a little bit self-serving for us and other system integrators in the field, but I think it is absolutely necessary. They won't be able to basically get all this talent and accelerate in the way that they need to do to make that cost effective for them, and also have helpers on the evolution to become really techcos. So I think it's the right ambition, but they don't have the capabilities now, and they will find it hard to build them up all on their own.
So quite a way to go yet by the sounds of it, but even in a couple of years, will the OpenRAN sector find the scale that it needs? Well, there's still a lot of hurdles to overcome if that's going to be the case, according to Stefan Terral of Terral Research, who is here talking about some of the challenges that the sector faces, but also some of the things it can do to overcome those hurdles. So you're here at the summit to talk about market dynamics in OpenRAN. What's your overall view of the sector at the moment?
Well, the sector is vibrant. I mean, tons of players, hundreds of service providers doing something with OpenRAN. But the problem is what they are doing, at that stage, they are still doing a lot of testing and validation efforts that pretty much are looking the same everywhere in the world. So you have a big problem of duplication all over the place, and that is killing the ecosystem. But make no mistake, the intent at the beginning was to bring as many players as possible, right? To broaden the ecosystem. So we have a big ecosystem, but we need the market to really take off, to sustain that ecosystem, and this is not happening.
Is it possible that the ecosystem at the moment has broadened maybe in the not right places or the wrong places? Maybe there's a lot of radio unit vendors, but not so many software vendors?
Well, the fact is, if you look at the outcome, you have Fujitsu, NEC, in the leading board. Was this the outcome? The desired outcome? We were thinking about having, somebody like Mavenir, Power Wireless. Mavenir is getting there, but because the market dynamics that started in Japan, you really have NEC and Fujitsu. Then if you open the hood, you see Intel inside, HPE. So, these are, the big players, very well-known names. And we were expecting more, from the unknown names or, the startups, the challengers. And this is difficult. It has been very difficult for them.
Yes. Do you think this might change over the years as the market evolves, the RAN intelligent controller becomes something that's deployed, and this opens up the sort of the application and the virtualized network element opportunity more?
Well, with the radio access network intelligent controller, you get the same problem. You have a flurry of players, thinking big about that. The problem is, as long as OpenRAN does not address the entire RAN, and you don't need, the RIC is not going to make it. The RIC needs to address not only OpenRAN radio units, it has to address all radio units. So we need to get there. So at the same time, you are creating the same problem. Everybody wants to have a RIC, or everybody has a RIC. With apps, R apps, X apps, fantastic. But if you look, at what's going on in the world, even Rakuten is not using a RIC, okay? So you may think like, hello, there is a problem. What is the problem? They're using SON, self-organizing networks, from AirHop Communications, a startup in San Diego, which, by the way, is working on the RIC. But you need to be ready to address the entire RAN universe, at some point, and this is not ready as long as, OpenRAN is not accelerating.
Okay.
So we are in a very interesting place, isn't it?
Is there a solution to this challenge?
Yes, actually I'm here to propose a solution. The solution is to consolidate all these testing and validation centers, like Japan actually has been doing. If you look at Japan, the OTIC, which is led by the OpenRAN Alliance, now is being used by the 4 players, such that they can actually share and not duplicate their efforts, share what they learn. So this is a premiere, a world premiere, that we need to replicate, in other places. And I believe Germany is in a sweet spot for that, because you have Deutsche Telekom, Vodafone, Telefonica on board, plus the new challenger, i9. So you have 4 players, you have the equivalent of something that is already happening in Japan. So now how to get there, they need to talk together and share the OTIC.
Okay, so a bit more industry collaboration would go a long way.
Absolutely, it would accelerate the process and then have OpenRAN take off.
So a lot of hurdles, it seems, for the OpenRAN sector still to overcome, but also a lot of optimism here at the summit. But quite a few things still need to change. The operators need to change the way they're engaging with the market and things like their procurement processes. There needs to be greater industry collaboration. The vendors need to be doing more, and there needs to be more vendors, new vendors coming into the sector. There's still a great deal of concentration around some very familiar names that are picking up the business right now. And while the OpenRAN sector might already be worth a few $1 billion, that is very concentrated in just a few markets with a few operators doing large deployment. more needs to be done. New and different operators need to be investing more in this sector if it's to develop properly. Well, that's all from Berlin, all for this edition of the OpenRAN show. Join us again soon.